First story. My adopted brother doesn't feel like he belongs in the family. After confronting my parents, I learned about how cruelly they treated him. My parents have 5 kids. 27F, 26M, then me, my twin, and our adopted brother are all 23. And we are 23F me, then 2 23Ms. John was adopted when his biological parents, who were close friends with our parents, unalive when he was a few months old. So this has been a slowly building thing for years now. But it really got everyone's attention over the past 5 years. I remember growing up with John normally, as any siblings would, and all of our other siblings say the same. We played, we fought, we made up, and we broke our parents' SHT. The past 5 years have been somewhat strange. At first, we thought it was just John being John. But now that I've spoken with him, we've discovered it was more than we thought. First off, John left the day he turned 18, which was a surprise because he had good grades, and everyone assumed he'd go to college like the rest of us. He graduated 1 semester early and left the house on his 18th birthday, which was a shock to everyone. He earned money doing chore work for our dad and uncles, bought his own car, and apparently saved enough to get an apartment. It was weird, and my parents were sad. But more than that, they were proud and happy for him. Dad offered John money to help him start out on his own. But John refused and said he'd be fine. My parents were insanely proud of John. They're not typically the brag on my kid kind of people, but they were telling everyone how independent, responsible, mature, and fearless John was. Now it's important to note that our siblings were always fairly close. I cried the first night John was gone and wanted my dad to figure out a way to make him come back, because I was scared he would unalive or something. So when the communication suddenly was almost nothing, it was weird, and we missed him. But our parents said that he was busy working and taking care of himself, and that when he'd settled and figured things out, he'd be back to his normal self. It never happened though, and he also stopped really talking to them. He talked to us about birthdays and holidays, but even then, it was strange. He always tries to meet up with siblings for dinner or drinks on birthdays, always visits our parents very quickly on their birthdays and Mother's or Father's Day, and on Thanksgiving and Christmas, he is in and out. For example, our older brother was the only one there when John was there for Mom's most recent birthday, and he said John was very clinical, and that it felt more like a soldier was paying respect to a commanding officer than anyone visiting their parents. One thing about this that stood out was that John talked to our mom, dad, and brother about a lot going on in his life. Apparently, he's got a girlfriend, just got a dog, and has a great new job in construction. No one knew any of this, and Dad cracked a joke about how they were terrible parents because how could they not know anything about what was going on in one of their kids' lives? After John left, our mom looked sad, and when our older brother asked her what was wrong, she said that it felt like John didn't want to be around her, and that she missed him before she refused to say anything more about it. So our older brother started a group chat with everyone. But John asked if any of us had noticed anything wrong with him. We'd all talked about how distant he'd been over the years, but I never liked this talk. At the end of it, we all arranged to meet up with John and try to talk to him to make sure everything was okay. It took some effort to get him to open up, but he finally did, and what he said has really rocked our family. He said, "I'm not their real son." We all immediately tried to reassure him that Mom and Dad love him, and we do too. But he had all these stories about how Mom and Dad treated him differently. There were lots of examples. Things like an older brother would hug or kiss Mom on the cheek, but she'd push John off if he tried the same. Dad would happily talk sports with anyone, but would be short with John. Our grandparents were never excited to see him, and aunts and uncles were not interested in him, his hobbies, or what was going on at school. One incident where Dad asked each boy to go on a hunting trip and never asked John until they were leaving. And when he did finally ask, you could tell Dad was annoyed, and my brothers did confirm this one because they thought it was weird how Dad acted too. When John said he was fine with not going, they said Dad looked happy about it. John would ask for help with schoolwork. Mom or Dad would say they were tired or tell him to ask teachers, but they'd stay up with the rest of us. You get the idea. There was a lot of stuff, and enough of us witnessed it that we don't think he was misremembering things or making them up. John wasn't bitter or angry about this. He said that he understood that they wouldn't be able to love him the same way they loved us, and that it would be inhuman of me to ask that of them. Which broke my heart. He said he refused the money from Dad because he would have felt badly about him using it on him instead of his real children. He said he will always love them, respect them, and be grateful for their sacrifices for raising him, but that it was too painful to be around them for too long because he knew they couldn't be what he wanted and that he couldn't be what they wanted. Our oldest sister was impassioned by this, and told my parents about it. It was a SHT show. Mom is crying, and Dad is punching a wall. They're both ashamed and hurt and insist that they love him just as much as they do the rest of us. Now that John knows what our parents know, he's upset and apprehensive about coming around, which is understandable. We love our brother, and our parents love him too, and we all miss him. How do we fix this? Editing this to add that I just learned from her that apparently Mom had a talk with John and asked him if he had any improper feelings about us, which holy SHT if nothing else made him feel like an outsider that did. TLDR. Our adopted brother doesn't feel as though he was loved by our family. How can we make amends? Update. The first people I wanted to really talk to were my parents. I didn't share everything John shared with us in the thread I made, but there were so many things they'd done that were just downright cruel. This conversation was fairly quiet and extremely emotional. I only write adopted brother here because I want to communicate with the people reading, but in my heart, he's just my brother. So when I detailed the things John remembered, I began to cry, and it hurt even more because I almost wanted my parents to deny them. I wanted them to be sure they'd never do anything so mean, and that maybe John was remembering things wrong. They never denied anything though. When specific instances arose, you could see them turn their heads or eyes away in shame. They'd get up and pace, then put their heads down. Never a denial. When I asked them, most times they'd say they didn't realize they were doing something, or that they were too careless. They kept saying that there was no excuse for it. I asked my father specifically about the fishing trip. He didn't invite John on. He said that sometime he'd ask the other boys, but it just never crossed his mind to go out of his way and ask John. I asked them both why they didn't help him with homework, or make sure their 18-year-old departure had a solid plan and would be safe. I never got a response on that. I asked my mom about why she pushed John off when he tried to be affectionate towards her, and her response is the one that really leaves me at a loss. She was very honest and said that in her mind she couldn't ignore the fact that he was a sexually mature male who was not biologically related. She said it felt no different having my other brothers hug and kiss her as babies as it would today, but that around the time John went through puberty, she couldn't see him as one of her babies anymore. She said her instinct then became to protect her daughters just in case. She said it was hard, and she wasn't happy about it, but she'd rather have protected us and gone too far to John's detriment than been too lax to our detriment. She said that when John left, she felt relieved. After talking with them, I spoke with my older sister, who was still very angry. Same with our other siblings. We all, the siblings, love him and want him back in our lives like before. We don't want to lose him. I reached out to John, and it was a bittersweet conversation to have. We were both happy to be talking to each other. We still have our inside jokes and things like that, and we can hang out like nothing ever happened. But when we spoke about re-establishing our old relationship, he said it would be difficult. He said he would love to be my brother, but that he feels gross around us girls because of Mom, and that he feels less than around our brothers. He said that loneliness stinks, but that it's better than feeling like people would rather not have you around. He said he felt like a family friend that everyone liked, but who stuck around too long. We both ended up crying. It was very ugly. We at least decided that we'd try as siblings. Second story. My mill won't climb down my arse after knowing that I'm pregnant and my due date is near. It's driving me crazy. My mill was supposed to be staying with us for a few days while attending a family member's funeral. But this morning, she told my husband out of the blue that she was staying longer now. There was no reason. She was just staying longer. She's been driving me pretty insane. She questions everything I ask my kids to do too loudly, while the youngest one naps and decides to play with kids before they head off to school, which makes them late. I could go on, but it's too much of a list. After my husband left, I took the older kids to school and went to work this morning. She let it slip. She knew I was having contractions. Just from the way I found her hanging out in the hallway when I opened our bedroom door, I was kind of suspicious that she may have been listening to what I said. She's tried making it to the other births in the past with the other kids, but hasn't made it in time. This is after we have told her we don't want her there. But with my luck, this baby has to be early and have the one woman who has been driving me insane this whole week stay longer. I've told her it's best she go back. We have a birth plan set up, and she has a job and husband for her at home. She keeps saying she will think about it, but then says that stuff can wait. My husband tried to talk to her about it, but she isn't budging. She follows me everywhere, like a little puppy. And the only time I'm away from her is in my own bedroom or bathroom, or like right now in bed. I know it may seem like a good idea for her to stay around to watch the other kids, but I know she will try to find a way out of doing that. I already have my cousin doing that anyway. Update. This morning, I talked to my husband about it and told him he needed to get his mom out because she was making things extremely difficult by allowing her to walk all over us in our own home. He agreed, and after our kids were at school and the youngest was at my cousin's house, my husband went and told his mom she needed to leave. Her stay had ended, and she needed to return home. At first, she said no numerous times before it turned into an argument, and my husband called his dad to somehow get down here to pick her up. She had driven here, so my husband asked Phil to find a way to come get her, and her car to save her the excuse to come back and get it. Mill screamed that she was going for a walk, because clearly we needed to calm down. And while she was gone, I told my husband we should pack up her stuff, so he did. He left her stuff outside by her car and locked the door. When she got back, she tried to get back in, and when she realized what was going on, she called Phil. Whatever he said to her made her get in the car and go home, so finally she is gone. My husband and I have both agreed that a few FaceTime calls here and there for her to see the baby will be fine. But she probably won't meet the baby face to face until Thanksgiving. Now, if you'll all excuse me, I'm going to enjoy my evening without her constantly behind me. Second update. She was texting me for a week after that about when she could see the baby that I gave birth to 48 hours after she left. But the way she had reacted when we calmly asked her the first time was what made us tell her that she could wait a bit before seeing the baby. She waited until Sunday of this week to start asking again. We've already told her now. She keeps forgetting that we have just been through a hurricane. We have my cousin's kids staying at our house since we just had another baby, our newborn. Plus, we would want her to quarantine for 2 weeks since she works around people who are sick. We told her if she wasn't here to help out, she wasn't staying, and to find a hotel. She went quiet after that. Last night, Phil called to say he had gotten into an argument with Mill because he found out she was planning to surprise us and show up at our house for a mini holiday. Mill's sister called Phil to tell him Mill's plan. Mill seems adamant that no one can change her mind, and she's right. But the more she acts like this, the more she is really starting to annoy me at this point, because she doesn't seem to care about anyone else's feelings. Last update. I feel like at this point my Mill is trying to fight me on everything. Every couple of weeks, it's something new with her. After my last post, Mill was told by Phil that if she showed up to our house, he would be changing the locks on their house. So she changed her mind and called to tell us she wasn't coming. She asked if we would come to their house for Halloween though. We had to tell her no. When she asked why, we told her it was because of the distance to their house and the fact that it was going to be a school night. A couple years ago, we spent Halloween at their house because it was on a Saturday, and ever since then, she's been trying to recreate that night again. We told her she might be lucky if we stayed at their house again for Halloween. She then started talking about plans for Halloween, like we didn't just say no, so we hung up on her. She texted me with ideas for activities the kids could do, and was sending me costumes for the baby. My husband told her to stop, because we had already told her no. Phil also found out what she was doing and told her to stop. We had already said no, and she needs to respect that. I haven't heard from her since, but according to Phil, she is still making plans and said she was making them for the rest of the family, not just us, so she can have fun with us. We already have plans for Thanksgiving and Christmas with my family, since it is their year. But I'm also hosting Christmas, so it will be fun sarcastic to see how she'll try to control it all. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.